Campaigners have branded the UK as the toxic poster child of Europe after the UK government fails to ban numerous highly hazardous pesticides. It has been discovered recently that dozens of pesticides forbidden in the EU are still permitted for use in the UK, which has prompted campaigners to state that the delays indicate vows made by ministers after Brexit may have been broken. Since Brexit, many toxic chemicals have been banned in the EU, but are still allowed for use in the UK, setting higher expectations for health risks to the public. Even though the UK has not participated in the EU's chemicals regulation scheme since 2021, it has its own scheme called REACH. Since 2021, 8 rules banning hazardous chemicals have been adopted by the EU and 16 more are to be added. Currently, the UK is only contemplating 2 restrictions on lead ammunition and harmful substances in tattoo ink. The latest additions to the UK substances of very high concern list were over 3 years ago in June 2020, while the European Chemicals Agency has added 26 substances so far to its equivalent list. The substances are primarily categorized as carcinogenic or affecting the reproductive system, in addition to being persistent in the environment and bioaccumulative. Companies are obliged to notify consumers immediately about safe levels of a chemical when it is added to the list. Chloe Alexander of the ChemTrust charity explained this in a newspaper. The EU's regime has a very effective role in driving innovation into finding much safer alternatives to substances on that list. As the list is assigned, further regulation on these substances is likely to happen. There is a deregulatory drive too. There is now a higher evidence threshold in the UK. It requires endless reviews before taking regulatory action. They look at what the EU is doing and say, we need more evidence. Everything is happening much slower. The EU has a very thorough risk assessment. Companies across the world can input into them. There's absolutely no reason why we should not adopt those EU controls. And it also poses problems for trading with the EU if we continue to fall further and further behind, she said. This comes after it was discovered that dozens of pesticides forbidden in the EU are still permitted for use in the UK, which has prompted campaigners to state that the delays indicate vows made by ministers after Brexit may have been broken, as I said in the beginning of the video. Back in June 2017, when the chair of the Environmental Audit Committee asked former Environment Secretary Michael Gove, oh boy, how the UK should regulate chemicals, all he said was better. Ross Bullitt of the Green Alliance think tank said about this, the UK played a key role in setting up the EU's gold standard chemicals regime. And yet now we are administering our own cut price system and lagging behind the EU in tracking and regulating harmful substances. It shows that government promises of maintaining environmental protection through Brexit are not being kept. The government recently paved the way for the UK to rejoin the Horizon programme. It surely makes sense for this government or the next to seek greater cooperation on chemicals and enhance protection for the public and our environment, he said. And not only is the world failing at just setting new and urgent targets to save the environment, but now targets that have already been set to clean up England's rivers, lakes and coastal waters from pollution have been pushed back 30 years, from 2027 to 2063. Pollution from water treatment plants and agriculture has been named as the key sources of damage in the UK's 3,651 water bodies, which has caused impediments to achieve good chemical and ecological status. Before the infamous Brexit, the UK government signed the Water Framework Directive, requiring participating countries to ensure all waters achieve good chemical and ecological status by 2027. By that year, only 4% of water bodies are on track to be overall in good condition. The Wildlife Trust said that previous plans from 2009 and 2015 have the responsibility to oversee the recovery of a large fragment of these waters, by 2015 and 21. But the targets were not just missed, they have been pushed back. This, according to Water Policy Manager for Wildlife Trusts Ali Morse, indicates that water bodies won't be healthy for the next few generations. For too long, we have allowed our rivers and lakes to become poisoned, decimating aquatic wildlife and habitats. We need ambitious targets to repair the immense damage inflicted on our natural world. Instead, the government is comfortable with kicking action on rivers into the long grass, or kicking the can down the road. At this rate, a great deal of us will not see England's rivers and lakes given a clean bill of health in our lifetimes, and that is nothing short of a tragedy. The latest state of rivers and lakes released by the Environment Agency in 2020 shows that only 16% meet the criteria for good ecological status, and that no water bodies are deemed to meet the criteria for achieving good chemical status. Both combined criteria are supposed to be met for a waterway to be considered in a good state. And back in October, The Guardian reported that a leaked report revealed that for the past 10 years, the Environment Agency was aware that raw sewage from wastewater treatment works was being illegally dumped into English rivers. One individual who worked on behalf of the EA admitted that the report highlights how common the practice of dumping sewage is. This was known in 2012 when self-regulation was pushed and water quality monitoring, staffing and regulation was dramatically cut, he said. The agency had an opportunity to prevent over 10 years of illegal sewage dumping, but chose not to take it, despite the funding being available. They knowingly permitted the illegal activity to continue. The EA said that £5.3 billion is being invested in plans over the course of the next 5 years to protect and improve the UK's waters, which are legally binding. The plan's objectives are to tackle main threats such as agricultural pollution, climate change, and excessive population growth. And the agency's executive director, John Leland, said about this, "Whilst progress has been made to protect and enhance English waters, it is clear that considerable time and investment will still be needed if we are to see further improvement in our water environment that we all want." The £5.3 billion action plan, which was supposed to be achieved by 27, was already funded, including £4.3 billion by water companies and more than £500 million to tackle agricultural effects on the water environment. However, as per the EA, if no progress is made, then only 6% of the water bodies would be in a good ecological state by 2043. The Wildlife Trust stated that pressure from water demand and pollution was non-stop, and from record-breaking temperatures and low rainfall to dumping raw sewage into rivers, it can be indicated that there is insufficient attention directed at sewage infrastructure. And so I had this, what I once called a shitstorm, another shitstorm topic for many times already, and this is just one more example on it. If you want to know something else but feces, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.